I recently rewatched the first season of Netflix's Castlevania with a friend, and oh my god, I forgot how much I love this show.
Would you please leave my testicles alone?
The fourth season came out nearly a year ago, wow. So I am very late to the party on this one. Not to mention that since I've never played any of the Castlevania games, I felt a bit apprehensive to talk about the series, given I felt I couldn't really add much to the conversation, but damn it, I really love this show, and I want to talk about it. Even if I am 84 years late. What I've adored from the very beginning is the character writing of the series. I may have some issues with the pacing, especially in the final season, but what's always gotten me through were its well-rounded characters. The show always gave me a deep understanding of their motivations and backgrounds, and as such, I always feel compelled to follow them on their adventures. That and the realistic character interactions always give me the vibe of, oh, I would absolutely be this sassy in this kind of life or death situation. Now, before I begin, I do want to acknowledge the allegations towards creator and writer Warren Ellis of abusing his power to coerce many people over the years into having sexual relationships with him. I know it can be difficult to confront this given Ellis wrote the whole project, and knowing the creator of something you love has done terrible things can cause a kind of dissonance that leaves you unsure of how to feel, or denying a reality you wish weren't true. However, it's also important to remember that this is commonplace in every industry. Where there are power imbalances and hierarchies set in place, exploitation will always follow, and this atmosphere created by these systems are designed to be hostile and skeptical of any victims daring to come forward. As such, I'm going to leave links about the situation, as well as a website created by Ellis victims, so many of us, in the description.
We are a group of over 60 women and non-binary individuals whose utmost concern is the safety and protection of others like us. Our aim is to dismantle the systems that allow people in power to abuse that power for the purpose of serial predatory crawling, emotional manipulation, and grooming. With this goal in mind, we are sharing our stories about a man who abused his power. This statement was written with the involvement of all who had signed it.
I highly encourage you all to take a look because these people's stories deserve to be listened to. Today's video isn't about all of that, but it's far too important to sweep under the rug. Unfortunately, terrible people can still be capable of making great art or art you love. It's one of those weird things about humanity that we will never understand. With that out of the way, let's shift to a lighter note. These three fucking goofballs. These three, Trevor, Sypha, and Alucard, they're essentially you and your D&D group going on epic quests, while also stopping occasionally to complain about how bad it is to coordinate dinner plans, while also arguing over who gets to be the least brain dead of the day.
Such a merry band we are.
These three on their own are wonderful characters, but put them together and you get some iconic banter that will forever be immortalized in YouTube compilations and memes galore. And that's the goal when you have a large group of characters, isn't it? To give them interesting dynamics that immediately grab the viewer and make them go, same. Especially if you're trying to figure out which characters you are within your own friend group. Personally, I like to think I'm a Sypha, but that's just my opinion.
See? God hates me.
But friendships also seem to be difficult for new writers to portray. Most of the time, the characters themselves are fine, but there's no spark when they're in a scene together. It kind of just feels like you forced a bunch of characters into a room together and held a gun to their heads as you made them talk about how much they care about each other. Hell, it's even the case with a lot of shows. Looking at you, Ruby and Sailor Moon Crystal. To properly pull off friendships or any kind of dynamic, you first need to understand each character on their own so you can see how they might interact and react with others. And Castlevania does a great job when it comes to character depth. So let's talk about our leading three for a bit.
Fortunate indeed, then, that I chose not to kill you and eat you, Belmont.
And that I decided against gutting you, flaying you, and turning you into shoes, Alucard.
Trevor is part of House Belmont, a notorious vampire hunting family that has found themselves persecuted by the very people they tried to protect. to the point where they were wiped out by the Church, the main antagonist of the first season, aside from Dracula's forces, and had their historic home ransacked. It's because of this that Trevor has been forced to basically raise himself since he was a teenager. He's a loner and a cynic, with no real attachments to humanity, aside from honoring the duties of his family, and a pretty strong hatred for zealots, which is understandable. Deep down, Trevor is a good being, but the hardships he's been faced with and the lack of true connections have left him a hollow shell, which is why his friendships, particularly his relationship with Sypha, are so important. Sypha is a magician and a member of the Speakers, a nomadic people who pass down their traditions and history through stories rather than writing, hence their name. Like Trevor, Sypha has found herself part of a group on the outskirts of society, continually misunderstood by the public, largely due to their being vilified by the Church, those assholes. Sypha is an optimist. Though she knows the cruelties of the world, she still believes it's possible to help others and fight back against Dracula to save everyone. It's part of why she clings to Trevor initially. She believes he's mentioned in a prophecy about a savior who sleeps under Greshit.
I'm Sypha Velades.
Sypha is compassionate, but that also drives her ferocity. She's quick-witted and will do whatever it takes to do what she feels is right. Hell, her sharp tongue is partially able to break through Trevor's apathetic facade. Like, no bitch, you ain't stoic, you a marshmallow. And if you try to hurt someone she loves, or an innocent, yo ass is grass. Or I guess incinerated. Or frozen, depending on her mood. Sypha's spark of life is what's needed to get Trevor to come out of his shell, to see that there are still indeed people who care for others and who are worth not only fighting for, but bonding with. They're like two sides of the same coin, one jaded, one sanguine. She is the heart of the team, the emotional core.
You turn me into someone who says shit. Fucking shit, hairy arse, words, giant slimy balls, shit!
I mean, there's a reason why out of the three, Sypha's always been my favorite. You know, aside from her being voiced by Alejandra Reynoso, the voice of Flora in the Nick dub of Winx. And her magic just generally being a visual highlight. Like, it's just simple fire and ice, yet it's so stunning and always used in creative, intelligent ways. Now this is how you do simple magic. But our trio would be incomplete without Alucard, the world's prettiest man.
You're so gorgeous, I can't say anything to your face.
The son of Dracula and his human wife, Lisa. This gives Alucard an inherent connection to humanity that Dracula lacks, and is part of the reason why he works as a foil to his father. Though Alucard is stoic and a bit eccentric, he still has a curious love for humans, largely thanks to his mother being a woman of science and reason dedicated to serving her community. They do explore the air of loneliness that's always seemed to hang over his head, though. After Dracula's defeat, Alucard is left alone in the old castle, while Trevor and Sypha go off on their own adventures. And so was born a host of Alucard in quarantine memes.
You are a horrible, terrible person, and many other words for horrible and terrible because I know all the words because I'm smarter than everybody. Oh my god, I am losing my mind.
The way that I adore this man. Though the trio being disbanded for season 3 and most of 4 makes me sad, it did feel necessary in order to explore other aspects of their characters, namely Sypha growing weary like Trevor and seeing the darkness within people via the judge, Trevor coming to terms with his perpetual aimlessness, and Alucard cementing that he is not and never will be his father. Alucard's story in Season 3 follows him meeting 2 Japanese hunters named Sumi and Taka. Having escaped from the Vampire Lord show, the twins hope to learn how to kill vampires from Alucard so that they can free their people and potentially turn the tides in humanity's favor. However, when Alucard refuses to teach them magic, the twins are convinced Alucard is keeping secrets from them. See, their own past is fraught with treachery, having been betrayed by people that they trusted, and now they assume Alucard is no different. And so, after lowering Alucard's guard, in a way where Alucard at least got to live his best bisexual life for 2 minutes, they attempt to kill him. Alucard saves himself but is forced to kill the twins in the process, even leaving them out in front of the castle on pikes, similar to what Dracula would do to humans who trespassed on his land as a warning to others. It signals this potential for Alucard to go down the same dark, twisted path as his father. But he doesn't. Instead, he winds up making more connections in Season 4, helping a nearby town that finds themselves besieged by night creatures, and even starting a romance with the village leader Greta. with whom she shares his past traumas to process them. Rather than allowing himself to simmer in his pain like Dracula did, Alucard takes the chance to reach out again, and that's what ultimately saves him. It even ends with a little town being founded outside Dracula's castle. This one lonely abode is now shaping up to be a thriving town, a visual for Alucard overcoming his own loneliness and fear of connection. These three are all compelling on their own, which is why their chemistry when they come together is so enthralling. There's a reason why we have so many compilations of seasons 1 and 2 with these dunderheads reading each other for filth and teasing each other.
He shouldn't die.
Yes, fuck you.
Because it's by far the most fun part of the whole show. These three build a very realistic, sincere friendship that feels heartwarming. They are the heart of this series. If Alucard's story is about overcoming loneliness and trauma, then Dracula's story is a warning about what happens when you let them consume you. It goes without saying that Dracula is that bitch in the vampire world.
Who the fuck are you?
Who the fuck are you?
I asked you first.
I asked you second.
He's a highly respected lord, but he mostly keeps to himself in his teleporting castle. He's fascinated by the machinations of the world when it comes to science and culture, but when it comes to people, ew. Which is why his relationship with Lisa is so important. It's similar to Trevor and Sypha's relationship, where Lisa is the key to getting Dracula to come out of his shell and warm up a bit. Lisa's genuine interest in the sciences and devotion to helping humanity is what was so endearing to Dracula, and what created a foundation for their relationship. You actually wind up rooting for them very quickly. In just the opening scene where they have a meet-cute, you can't help but adore these two's chemistry and want them to be happy together. For her to achieve her dreams of helping people, and for him to stop acting like an angry cat and be more of a friendly cat. Let's be real, Dracula has to be part cat with how he just shifts around in the shadows, wanders wherever he likes, and then lounges about threatening anyone disturbing his peace.
What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that, a fucking cat?
And that's why it's so heartbreaking to witness the fallout. Lisa is punished by the church for heresy, aka a woman dared to be an influential member of her community, and on top of that, did a science. That's at least 3 ticks on the she's a witch counter.
They're burning all the witches, even if you aren't one.
They burn her at the stake to make an example out of her, and all the while she pleads with them not to because she knows what the consequences will be, and she begs Dracula to be better than them, but unfortunately, it's Dracula, and Dracula is nothing if not dramatic. Dracula is not driven by some grand scheme to conquer the world or get a MacGuffin or whatever else big bads are into these days. He just wants some good old-fashioned revenge. It's a simple but incredibly understandable motivation, and it drives him to some pretty horrifying ends. And interestingly, the show actually spends a lot of season 2 exploring how short-sighted that revenge quest is. This vendetta is driven not by logic or reason, but by the need for catharsis. Dracula is so lost in his own grief, in his anger, that he's lashing out however he can to release that pain. It's why the Vampire Council seems so disjointed and unable to formulate a proper strategy. Dracula himself didn't think that far, and he's even told his advisor Hector a completely different strategy than what he intends. He says because he just didn't think to at the time, but subconsciously, it's probably because he knew Hector would only be on board with a controlled culling of the human population, but would be against the complete and utter bloodshed Dracula craves. The thing is, in a world without humans, vampires would be fucked. They need human blood to feed upon. I mean, sure, they have pigs, but pig blood is this world's equivalent to Taco Bell, and some of us love ourselves enough to not subject ourselves to that kind of torment.
Pig blood gives me the shits. I'm sorry, but there it is.
But Dracula doesn't really care about the world he leaves in his wake, because it's not his problem. That idea that this is Dracula's own way of dragging everyone down with him, it's pretty on the nose, actually. He wants a nebulous other to suffer the way he has suffered, and in this case, it's humans. All of them. They're the easiest scapegoat to use as a pretense to offload his pain. Never mind that it was mostly the church's doing, never mind the innocents like the old woman who paid her respects to their burned house who'd be caught in the crossfire. Never mind what will happen to the vampires squabbling for some kind of nourishment after humanity is gone. None of that matters. It is a short-sighted need for relief that is far easier than actually unpacking and processing his trauma. Salem wishes she had this depth. Admittedly, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the ending where Dracula and Lisa are somehow brought back and are given a second chance. I don't know if this is a reference to something from the games, but honestly, good for them. I honestly do hope that they have a long, happy life together. But they also better visit their son at some point because, good lord, this family needs some therapy. As Dracula's trusted human advisors, Hector and Isaac are cynics. They've each found themselves marginalized by society. Hector, because he had a fascination with death and watched too much Pet Sematary, and Isaac because, well, he was literally a slave who killed his master who had his love weaponized against him, and now hates people just as Dracula does. In that sense, it's actually interesting that Hector is the one that was fed the lie to go along with Dracula's plan. His motivation is far more personal, whereas Isaac's traumas are the result of systems of oppression, meaning Isaac is more likely to be versed in the cruelty of the world at large, whereas Hector, even though he was feared even by his own mother, was still able to at least somewhat keep his head in the clouds. So much so he never bothered clarifying Dracula's actual plan and just assumed Dracula wanted to cull the population. From season 2 onward, these two get a lot of time to shine. Mostly because as humans, you wouldn't expect them to side with Team Kill all the humans. But their cynicism, particularly Isaac's, explains why. And we even get treachery within the Vampire Court when Carmilla takes advantage of Hector's naivete and doubts. Hector kind of just remains Carmilla's prisoner into season 3, then the quartet's personal forge master after he's manipulated by Lenore, more on that later. But Hector is a character who was routinely taken advantage of for the innocence that he still carried with him, even into adulthood. Carmilla used him to weaken Dracula's forces in season 2, and Lenore strung him along into serving the quartet's needs in their own grand plan in 3. It isn't until season 4 that Hector learns to play the game and understand the motivations of others properly, and use that to further his own goals. He knows Carmilla's plan is, well, for lack of a better word, batshit.
And there's nothing like a mad woman. What a shame she went mad.
That it's going to backfire, and that Lenore can be manipulated, given she's smart enough to see Carmilla's dwindling grip on reality as well. Not to mention, with the slave ring on Hector, Lenore's guard is down, and she isn't expecting Hector to be clever and beat her at her own game.
We could be the way forward, and I know I'll pay for it.
So seeing Hector's growth by the end in summarizing why Carmilla brought about her own demise is so satisfying, as well as his restored friendship with Isaac. Isaac, meanwhile, basically gets his own show within a show for the last 2 seasons. He's sent far away by Dracula's mirror in Dracula's attempt to save what he considered his last and only friend. Despite Isaac's hatred of humanity, he really did love Dracula and still does. Am I using that as a way to read Isaac as queer? Come on, y'all know me. Isaac is best husbando demon lord. We have no choice but to stand a gay icon. Let me have my headcanon, okay? Gay tangent aside, Isaac starts to build his own army of night creatures in season 3 and make his way back to Wallachia, in the hopes of finishing what Dracula started, and also getting revenge on Carmilla, that bitch. However, that all changes when he meets what has to be the most entertaining and fascinating shipmaster in all of creation. The people of this city were terrified of Isaac and his army, even though Isaac simply wanted to pass through peacefully, and it was this fear and the refusal to let them through that led Isaac to killing them all. But even after this, when Isaac threatens the captain's life for his ship, the captain is totally chill. He acts like he's been through this shit before. Ah yes, another demon lord threatening my life. Must be Tuesday. He even uses reason and wit to save himself. Sure, you can kill me, but how the fuck are you gonna sail your way to your destination when you don't know how to work the damn thing?
Sailing a boat cannot be hard.
Isaac, sweetheart, baby, angel, darling, I love you. But even in the era of YouTube tutorials, you would be hard-pressed to figure this shit out. I've seen enough Mr. Balin videos about arrogant captains going down with their ships to know where this is headed. Honestly, the conversations between Isaac and the captain are some of the best content to come out of this show. The captain's unexpected insights and wisdom lead to an interesting dynamic between him and Isaac, and kind of wind up reviving Isaac's faith in people. Maybe not all of them are shitheads who'll kill whatever they don't understand, and seeing the captain poke holes in Isaac's plans to kill all people is some of the most cathartic shit I've ever witnessed. If only the captain were around for Dracula. Well, actually, I don't think Dracula would be as inclined to listen thoughtfully as Isaac. And it's through this that Isaac winds up building his own kingdom. Again, interesting conversations, this time with Demon Boy Philosopher about why Isaac does what he does. He has the night creatures bury the dead left by the magician, hoping that one day the city can be resettled for others in the future. He's focused on a future for all, rather than wanton destruction to avenge his past. And that is why he is best boy and I would die for him. See, this is how you do conversations between characters, even in a visual medium. You have them discuss real shit, and we will be engaged 110%. Literally, I could watch a whole show just about Isaac and the captain going on random misadventures across the world. Now, when it comes to the vampire queens, I gotta admit, I wanted more of them. Off the bat, I was most intrigued by them because, it's 4 vampire ladies all planning to conquer the world and fuck shit up. Hell yeah, sign me the fuck up. And while their story did make sense and was fitting for what they were going for, I really thought season 4 was gonna be this all-out war between the quartet and Isaac's forces, with our trio caught in the middle. So when it was not that, yeah, I naturally felt disappointed. But putting disappointments aside, I do like what we got for these 4, especially Carmilla and especially Lenore. As I mentioned before, Carmilla's goal for season 2 is to manipulate Hector into usurping Dracula. And we learn in season 3 that this was the quartet's plan to begin with. They saw Dracula's plot for what it was, a short-sighted revenge quest built on nothing but emotion. They knew they could worm their way in and possibly take over the movement for themselves, establishing their own empire, the likes of which the vampire world had never seen, especially with women at the helm. Carmilla's anger comes from a very real place. Even in the vampire world, women have often been underestimated, subject to the whims and emotions of men doing whatever they please, and targeted the moment they try and carve out a space for themselves. But with Carmilla, there is a distinction, as pointed out by Hector, between strength and power. Strength is real, rooted in your own capabilities and the connections and alliances that you make. It's something you can actually back up. Power, meanwhile, is illusory. It is the aesthetic of influence, when really everyone just kind of hates you and would gladly twist a knife in your back if given the chance.
I don't trust nobody and nobody trusts me.
Empires fall when they overextend their reach. When they try to control so much land after mindless expansion that they lose sight of what they can actually maintain, and the whole structure collapses in on itself, because it wasn't built on real strength, but illusory power. And that's Carmilla's mistake. Rather than listen to the concern of her sisters, she followed her ambition to her fate, more focused on taking things for herself and showing off her power than actually building alliances and creating strength. A strength the quartet already had in spades when they ruled Styria. Carmilla's actually got a lot in common with Dracula, with focusing on short-sighted goals. But whereas Dracula wanted to destroy to offload his grief, Carmilla wants to conquer as a means of biting back at a world that has continually pushed her down. Hell, it started with her killing the vampire lord who turned her. She's always fought back against men trying to control and entrap her, breaking free of cages. But even when there's no cage left, your brain, which is so used to living in captivity, can often deceive you into thinking there's an even larger cage around you still. Essentially, Carmilla is a girl boss. You remember the days when Rachel Hollis and others like her made their fame on being influential capitalists with this avant-garde brand of feminism, only to have their careers fall apart after being exposed for mistreatment of workers, fraud, and racism, among other things? It was the reliance on the structure of capitalism, the domineering of one over the many, where the fruits of labor are siphoned off to the people at the top, that was their undoing, and they used feminism as a facade to make themselves look progressive. Girl boss. Girl boss, gaslight, gatekeep. Girl light, gate boss, gas keep. Carmilla is essentially the vampire world's equivalent, so focused on recreating the same tired, corrupt power structures that came before her, but make it feminist. Or rather, make it a hollow brand of feminism where you're still ruining plenty of lives, including women of color, queer women, and all the like, but you can at least fake looking progressive for a few years until you destroy your own life with some plagiarized Instagram captions and a single TikTok.
What is it about me that made you think I want to be relatable?
Lenore, meanwhile, is my favorite of the quartet, and in general, one of my favorite characters out of the whole show. Each member of the quartet serves a distinct purpose, as explained by Lenore. Striga is the strength, Morana is the organizer, Lenore is the diplomat, and Carmilla is the visionary. If I had to boil down Lenore's character, she is Carmilla's antithesis. She understands the connections between people as commerce. Give people what they want, and they'll give you what you want. It's a more effective alliance than just forcing people to do what you want out of fear, and it's more practical. She knows how to read people, to get them to let their guard down and reveal what drives them, and then uses that to further her own goals. Conniving? Yes, but at least she's more tactful about it. This is how she plans to get Hector to do what the quartet wants. They need his abilities as a forge master to create their own army of night creatures, but find that a difficult task given Carmilla, well, as Murata puts it, beat the shit out of him for several hundred miles after manipulating and betraying him, then tossing him into a dingy, tiny cell. Carmilla's worn out her good graces with Hector, which is where Lenore steps in, and Lenore is far more patient with Hector, and thus more effective at learning how he works. There's the sense that Lenore is, at least on some level, genuinely interested in Hector. She's kind of fascinated by his story of being the hapless fool tricked by Dracula into helping him annihilate humanity. And she reveals that Hector's assumption that humanity would be cold is actually the quartet's goal. She's promising Hector what he seemingly wanted in the first place. Ultimately, she doesn't really view him as an equal, not even in the slightest, especially given how she slips the slave ring onto him while they do, taking advantage of an intimate moment Hector's probably never really had with anyone else before. Talk about a bad first time. But Lenore's affect gives her the appearance that she does care, and maybe she does deep down. I mean, someone who'd go out of their way for a spider of all things must surely care about life.
Is this going to be like the time you found a spider with one broken leg and you tore the castle apart looking for something small enough to make a splint out of? No.
It's fascinating to see how much these two were able to play each other like fiddles in the last 2 seasons, though. They truly were made for each other, which is why it's so sad seeing Lenore despondent when Styria is overtaken by Isaac, Carmilla is dead, and her other sisters are nowhere to be found. Everything she worked for is gone, everything she cares about is gone, which is why she steps into the sunlight to turn to dust. She believes there is nothing left for her, and she doesn't want to end up living in a cage or becoming like Carmilla, driven by spite in pointless efforts that ultimately destroy herself and everyone around her. Striga and Morana, though, they deserved more. They're just kind of there, not really doing much of anything aside from organizing Carmilla's war effort in season 4 and realizing what a terrible fucking idea this all was. I do love them though, especially as lesbian vampire royalty. I just wish the vampire queens got to do more plot-wise. Again, would have loved an all-out war involving the main characters, the trio versus the Vampire Quartet. I will be forever pissed we were robbed of that. Oh, I do love Striga's day armor though. Raven Bronwyn is quaking.
If you don't have your own story, you become part of someone else's.
Truer words have never been spoken, and over the course of the show, we find it rings true with pretty much everyone. Characters who aren't fully aware of themselves and the motivations of others are strung along, made into pawns for someone else's game. Characters who find themselves aimless and without purpose are sucked into unspeakable chaos. Characters driven by unprocessed trauma meet their demise, or are forced to grow to change their fates. Castlevania works largely because of its characters. The character writing in this show is top-notch, always able to help you understand their motivations, what drives them and why, and let that organically guide the story forward. There may be some pacing issues, and I'm still not particularly fond of Season 4 for, well, my own grand expectations. But that aside, I utterly adore this show. I may not know jack shit about the games, but that has not stopped me from vibing with the trio's nonsense. Anyhow, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this from me, then be sure to subscribe and ring that bell for notifications because YouTube hates creators. And if you would like to support myself and the channel further, you can pledge over on Patreon and or check out my urban fantasy novel, Diseneribus from the Ashes, wherever books are sold. I'm the Unicorn of War, and my heart is a shit show after crying so much.